you something, students. There's no such thing as a free lunch. There is a complimentary buffet at the House of Commons, but it's rubbish. I can't tell you how angry it makes me, how appalled I was to see a group of vagabonds and layabouts and scroungers who rely for the taxpayer and their parents to pay their rent, having their car attacked by students. I like a laugh as much as the next man, more if the next man's Norman Tebbit. He hates laughter. But for students who be allowed to go around smashing up private property unless they're members of a very exclusive drinking society. We don't riot here! This isn't France! This is England! If we're upset about something, we write a stern letter to the Telegraph! We mutter in pubs! We go on a killing spree until Paul Gascoigne brings us chicken! That's our way! It's very good to have you here, Dave. The finest financial mind in the country. And your friend... Oh, here he comes. And your friend Bob, who so kindly admitted to being retarded when we opened up. I must say, Bob, the coalition have a special place for people like you. A ditch. Now, I'm going to explain a few of the government's policies to you people, for want of a better word. You have to excuse me, I've got this. I've got this. I've got this uncontrollable flapping hand. It's alright, it'll go off in a minute. There it goes. Now, Libya. Libya, right. You'll be glad to know that British planes and ships are, as we speak, on their way to Libya. Colonel Gaddafi's cheque has cleared and they should be with him in the morning. He has assured us that he won't use these on his own people, just like he did when we sold him those submachine calculators, the cluster vases, and the intercontinental ballistic soap. For those of you who think the government's response was too slow, I say this. No, it wasn't. It was not. William Hague made it very clear that the RAF were very busy that day. Top Gun doesn't watch itself, you know. He made it very clear that we could not have launched planes from Gatwick Airport without causing severe disruption to Nick Clegg's holiday plans. Nick Clegg, of course, got into a lot of trouble last week, suggesting he didn't know he was in charge. But in all fairness to Nick, there's a lot of things he doesn't know. Like what we call him behind his back, the secret password to get into the bunker in case of nuclear attack, and the meaning of the word pledge. Now, some of you have been unkind enough to bring up an article I wrote in 2008 which called Colonel Gaddafi a great green and gold swathed god of a man, standing astride his country like a naked colossus. Massive heavenly balls dragging through the streets of Tripoli, gently nudging dissidents to each side with his enormous celestial glands. Others of you have brought up the fact that whilst I was special envoy to Libya, I did leave my wife in order to have an affair with Colonel Gaddafi and a houseboy named Ian. To those of you, I would say this. To those of you who think our relationship with Libya was too close, Gaddafi was a murderous dictator who we suspected had weapons of mass destruction. And there's only one thing you can do when you've got a murderous dictator who you suspect has weapons of mass destruction. Exactly what they want, to invite them back into the international community. Just like we did in Iraq. We tried to sell off the forests, we have to sell off the forests. We have to sell off the forests. Mrs. Thatcher needs a new place to put her gingerbread house. The word forest comes from the Old French meaning vast expanse of trees, or the New French meaning car park. The coalition is absolutely committed to improving access to the forest, getting more people into the forest by turning them into car parks. We'll admit that the economic results from the last quarter of last year weren't exactly what we might have hoped, but Vince Cable has been bullishly defending the coalition from those critics who say we're reducing the deficit too far, too fast. Critics like Vince Cable in April of last year. George Osborne has made it very clear there is no plan B. making him the first Chancellor ever to boast about not having done any contingency planning. He also intends to have his house not burned down by not insuring it. David Cameron has made it clear that youth unemployment is a priority. The Conservative Party is doing all it can to get young people jobs, mainly by auctioning them off at fundraisers. Mervyn King, the Governor of the Bank of England, has said there are sharp divisions within the Monetary Policy Committee, mainly between those who think we should have the Montrachet and those who think we should have the Pouilly-Fumé. Control orders. We got rid of control orders. Well, we've renamed them TPIMs, Terrorism Prevention and Interrogation Measures. TPIMs, of course, are named after two of George Osborne's favourite drinks. The other being the blood of orphans. Nick Clegg pledged to get rid of control orders in his manifesto before the last election, which leads to the list of the things Liberal Democrats have successfully scrapped, now reading their principles, and that's it. Barnsley by-election last night, the Liberal Democrats came 6th. No punchline, I just think it's hilarious.
Absolutely.
Yes, he knows! Yes. Get rid of all of them. Yellow, cardigan-wearing, hemp-bound scum. They make me so angry. I pop a blood vessel and a stiffy each time one of them.
You and me both.
Oh, you can come round to my estate for the weekend.
I'm with you.
Rock on, brother.
Now calm down.
Some people are taking some of the things I said before the last election to mean that I don't think the Liberal Democrats are like the two normal parties. Major parties. It's not true. I mean, I didn't say that a vote for the Liberal Democrats is a vote for cervical cancer. What I said was, a vote for the Liberal Democrats is a vote for services that can certainly be trusted. And I didn't say what they say about Vince Cable. They didn't let me finish. I was going to call him a complete contender for the title of best parliamentarian in the country. Also today, we published our new constitutional reform package. We're going to get rid of 31 MPs. Just get rid of them. Get rid of them. We don't need 31 MPs. Now, some of you, the maths-oriented ones, or the nuclear physicists, I've got my eye on you, might go up to me and say, but hang on, if there are fewer MPs, then surely my vote is worth less, because if the constituencies are larger, and I'm one of 80,000, I'm one of 60,000, you're actually diluting my vote. And to those people I say this. Shut up, you mathsy idiots! No one cares about your number! We have to reform the House of Lords! It's an absolute disgrace that in this day and age, a sitting government can just appoint people to the upper house. In order to do that, we will have to appoint 172 new people to the other house, but it's a disgrace. Some of you might say, well, won't actually getting 172 new lords outweigh the cost saving of getting rid of 31 MPs? But no, it won't. No, it won't, because the lords cost us nothing. Nothing at all. Not a penny. Not a sausage. Apart from £74 a day living allowance, £85 a day office allowance, and £23 a day food allowance. Nothing at all. Now, some of you might say, you've got some gall, all of you, to try and rewrite the Constitution just a year after you're all found with your hands in the till, and yes. Now, I should concede that mistakes were made. In my own defence, my mistakes included the Duck Island, the Donkey Archipelago, the Beaver Peninsula, and the series about buildings that became known as Monkey Mansion. In retrospect, with a little cursory research on the internet, I could have discovered that rhesus monkeys are highly territorial, and aggressive, and infectious. Had I known that, I could not, in all good conscience, have invited them to work at our local Shore Start Centre. Questions were also raised about the fact that I paid my wife £86,000 a year for secretarial service that she wasn't doing. Well, look at it this way. I used to have a very, very expensive prostitute habit. By paying my wife a nominal sum for the same services, apart from the anal, we've had to outsource that, is a cost saving to the taxpayer. Everything I did was well within the rules of Parliament. I should know, I wrote them. People come up to me a lot and they say, what is a coalition? And I like to define it like this. A coalition is when two powerful, complementary forces come together to make something even better. So, for example, you take a weasel and you put it into a sack with another weasel. And if you squeeze really, really hard, then maybe, just maybe, you'll end up with one enormous mega weasel! Or two dead ordinary weasels in a fucking weasel. By the way, it's a win-win. The essence of the coalition is compromise. You know, Chris Hume was very against nuclear power, now he's very for it. Vince Cable was against raising VAT to 20%, now he's very for it. Nick Clegg was against tuition fees, now he's for them. David Laws was against the sort of cuts, now he's for them. There's been a lot of compromise on both sides of the Liberal Democrat. It's all worked so well ever since David Cameron made his big, open, comprehensive offer from his big, open, comprehensive face. We've seen them all sitting around the cabinet table, sitting down in a spirit of friendship where some of us were promised we would be. There's no space now. You've got to make room for Danny Alexander. It's fine, it works well. We're certainly not going to go home and sit in our pants watching News 24, eating mayonnaise from a jar and weeping ourselves to sleep until we finally find the sweet release of comatoseness in a puddle of what can only be called rancid fromage frais and tears. Not tonight. I hate them. I hate them so much. But no, they're all our friends now. I should speak up in defence of our Liberal Democrat friends. They've got a lot of stick for going back on some of their apparent promises, but I must point out that no one, before the election, knew the parlous financial state of the country. There was no way of knowing the parlous financial state of the country without looking at the freely available information from the Budget Office. Borrowing has never been this high a proportion of GDP, never, ever, since 1993. And we're not going to go back there. In 1993 there were only 4 television channels and Terry Christian was on one of them. Marty Clark's Good Sex Guide, Mr. Blobby, Jamiroquai. And in 1993, like that, overnight, suddenly global hypercolour t-shirts aren't cool anymore. And you have to sit on the far side of the bus on the school trip to Bewley, on your own, listening to Genesis on tape and wishing you were dead.
Nothing wrong with Genesis.
You wouldn't say that if you had to listen to it as many times as I did.
I've got their albums.
Do you? That doesn't surprise me. I'd like to say quick something about the Comprehensive Spending Review, which will unfortunately lead to 500,000 public servants losing their jobs. I'd like to say this. You didn't think we'd do it! You didn't think we'd do it! We did! We did! Library's gone! Nurses gone! Doctors gone! Policemen gone! The army gone! Aircraft carriers gone! The film girls are gone! Foreigners gone! Poor people fucked! Not so poor people fucked! Disabled people fucked! Rich people... Now hang on, let's not forget to say. We are all in this together. Unless you want a degree, in which case you're already fucking out. You hear the word fascist bandied around a lot recently? Protesters, industrial tribunals, wives. And Ian Duncan Smith didn't help, in that when he was introducing his new workfare programme, he introduced it with the slogan, "Work helps you be free." Which some people point out was fairly similar to the slogan that was above the gates at Auschwitz. But that was Arbeit macht frei. One is makes you free, helps you be free. We say helps, they say makes. There's a big difference between helps and makes. The Nazis made people do slave labour in camps. We will help them. We need some new thinking on the unemployed. I go down to my local park and I find the local homeless and I round them up and I say, come into my Lebensraum, my living room. Why not do a little decorating? You can start over there. Some of them have really quite serious drug problems. When you bring in the tea and sandwiches, the ones who are Heil Hitler and... Sorry, the ones who are Heil Hitler... The ones who are high will hit... There's nothing wrong with being a fascist! Edward VIII was a fascist, Lord Lucan was a fascist, Alan Clark was a fascist, Judy Finnegan's a fascist! One time we looked out over this audience and seen a sea of white faces. Now they're every colour of the rainbow. Apart from green, and blue, blue, and indigo, violet, and orange, and red. Not that I've got anything against Mr. and Mrs. Lee. They do a very good job running that restaurant. And they're huge examples to us. They've travelled from a tyranny to come to Britain. They are the most outstanding chinks of light. Chinks of light at the end of a long, tiny tunnel to democracy. Being English isn't anything to be ashamed of. Being gay is something to be ashamed of. Unless it was a one-time incident with a prefect after lights out. Oh, you can't poo-poo England. It's far too big. Possibly poo-poo Wales after a particularly vicious curry. Good English dish curry. Your average Indian would have you believe that until the 18th century he was swanning around in pyjamas, drinking tea and playing kabaddi. Not a bit of it! When the Dutch East India Company landed in Delhi in 1783, you couldn't get a Peshwari naan and garlic rice for love nor money! Empire was the best thing that ever happened to the Indian! Got him off his arse! Oh, we didn't ask to colonise! We didn't ask to colonise you, we just did it! Then they tried to get their independence through non-violence. We had the perfect answer for non-violence. Violence! Lots and lots of lovely violence! And they had the gall to ask for their tigers back. Tigers? I said, no, I don't think we've seen any tigers. These... they're sofas. They're stripy moving sofas. I mean, are you sure? You hadn't. You were very sure about those tribal treasures, and look where they turned up. That's right, and the British Museum isn't even in India, is it? I abhor political correctness. I have a handicapped son, but nowadays you can't say handicapped son. You have to say, I have a daughter. Can't say anything nowadays unless you're Elvis Costello. I was sitting with my daughter the other day listening to the radio, and a song came on, Bold as You Like, Oliver's Army. The lyrics, la 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 la, one itchy trigger, la 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 la, one less white N-word. Middle of the afternoon, bold as you like, one less white N-word. I looked at my daughter, she was obviously picking all this up, and I said, don't you dare, don't you ever use that term, don't you ever say that. It's one fewer. Not that we don't have our problems in this country, we've got a lot of violence against women. We have to ask ourselves why. Why do we have so much violence against women? The answer is because they just don't listen. Take Margaret Thatcher. You wouldn't have seen Margaret swanning around Croydon city centre with her tits hanging out at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning singing Don't You Wish Your Girlfriend Was Hot Like Me? You couldn't. Margaret had her tits removed in 1946 replaced with iron spikes that fired from her chest and punched your rivals if you even thought about her tits. Just ask David Plunkett. I have it on very, very good authority that Margaret doesn't even have a vagina. Just a second pair of teeth. Covered in cobwebs, earwigs, and the bones of dead children. Gone too soft in this country. Got the Archbishop of Canterbury saying we need Sharia law. We don't need Sharia law. In Riyadh, they'll cut off your hand for stealing a loaf of bread. That should be a hanging offence. Capital punishment is the only language some people understand. Even worse, French is the only language some people understand. I recently went to Iran, and they said to me, we have caught an homosexual. Come, watch us put him to death. And that made me angry. That made me really very angry. Because did not our Lord, Jesus Christ, say, let he who is without sin cast the first stone? So I did. I was hanged every day at school and didn't do me any harm apart from a withered arm and some sexual dysfunction. Oh yes, I haven't had an erection since the Falklands War. Wasn't just the Belgrano that went down that night. You're a lot of poppycock talk nowadays about the decline in British motoring. Time was you saw nothing but British cars on the road. The Triumph Gerald, the Morris Tea Cake, the Austin Nanny. Came with twin airbags as standard. Airbags you could really lose yourself and forget all about Daddy not coming to see you open the batteries for the second day. Father, you're too old for Daddy now! You're too old for Daddy! Do you want to go to the cellar? Do you want to go to the cellar where it's dark and it's cold and there saint, St. George, born in Malta, lived in Libya, never came to England in his life. But he's as English as the Prince of Wales. Oh yes, Charles Schleswig, Holstein, Saxe, Coburg, Gothridge, as English as you or I. Not Dave, he looks Mediterranean. You can tell he's English. 1, he's eccentric. 2, he owns castles. And 3, he's attracted to a woman who looks like she's passing her way through a cow's second stomach. His English values, English values, Queen cheese, clicky wicket, Queen mother and... Sorry, if you'll excuse me, I was going to cancel my subscription to the Daily Mail.